Other contributors include Bear, who believes science is the relentless process of asking questions, testing, and trying again, even when it's not easy. Learn more at ScienceDelivers.com. This is NPR.
This is Charlotte Talks. I'm Mike Collins. On the local news roundup, it's back to school at CMS with Crystal Hill still in charge as superintendent and toasting the year ahead.
Here's to a great school year.
And the school board decides to release a report on its 2-month investigation. As one board member put it,
confidentiality does not have to mean silence.
Not everyone agrees. ICE arrests continue as former Border Patrol Commander Greg Bovino returns and makes some unflattering comments about those helping immigrants. A major loss for Meta nationwide, with North Carolina Attorney General Jeff Jackson quoting from the company's internal documents.
Instagram is a drug. We're basically pushers.
And the fight over I-77 heats up again. Here to fill us in on those stories and more is Nick Canal, WFAE reporter and local host of All Things Considered every afternoon. Ashley Fahey is with us. She's the managing editor of the Charlotte Ledger. Mary C. Curtis is a columnist for Rollcall.com and host of their Equal Time podcast. And Julian Berger is WFAE's race and equity reporter. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for being here.
Hello, Mike.
This week, it was back to school at CMS, with Superintendent Crystal Hill returning to her job after a 2-month suspension. She started the year with a greeting to students and staff on YouTube.
Let's make this our best year yet, because at CMS, the future is bright and the possibilities are truly endless. Welcome back, and here's to a great school year.
Well, she sounds chipper. And Eric Savitz, a mom of a student at Beverly Woods Elementary, spoke to WFAE about this new beginning.
This is my son's first day of kindergarten, and I'm just excited for him to meet friends, grow and learn. He's ready. Just excited for this next phase for him.
So, Nick, how did that first day of school go?
I think it was pretty run-of-the-mill as far as first days of school go. There's a couple of new things that the school district is rolling out this year. There's like a new app for tracking buses, which I know is important to a lot of parents. So we're kind of getting our first look at that. They've announced some other changes with screen time for kindergarten through second grade students, like, limiting their access to screens in class and access to YouTube. So they're saying they're reviewing their screen time policies and getting some feedback, maybe making some changes next year. Otherwise, though, I think it was a pretty standard first day. You heard a lot of emotions. We heard from a mom who was, crying as she was dropping off her kids, but saying she's crying because she's happy. Yeah. That was sort of a soundbite this week that made me smile.
Whenever I think about going back to school, I cry too.
You get a lot of that traffic, don't you, Mike?
as usual, we were short a couple of teachers, more than a couple, but we were short some teachers. We were short some bus drivers. That there didn't seem, however, to be any hiccups as a result of that.
I don't think we heard any reports about that. Of course, there's always a little bit of kind of a bumpy road on the first day when, school bus drivers are still learning their routes. Sometimes it takes a little bit extra time to get everybody home or to pick everybody up in the morning. But we didn't hear about anything major, not this year.
So WFAE spoke with another parent on the first day of school. Heather Dinolfo told us that she loved her child's school and is a big supporter of public education, but she's been frustrated by superintendent turnover here in recent years and with this summer's suspension of the superintendent with little to no explanation.
The superintendent changing so often is a huge concern for a lot of parents, and also CMS being more transparent with, why Crystal Hill was let go and then she was brought back.
To be clear, Hill was not let go and brought back. She was suspended with pay and then, following the conclusion of a 2-month investigation, was reinstated. Another parent told us, quote, "We've just got to trust the process and trust that the school district is doing the right thing." But with a cloud of mystery continuing to surround the reasons for all this, CMS board member Carlita Hatch asked the board to release the details of the investigation minus confidential information.
Confidentiality does not have to mean silence. There's a space between releasing everything and saying nothing, and North Carolina law actually provides a process for navigating that space.
So the board has now decided to release a report on the investigation, acting on a motion from Hatch to release, quote, the investigation process, key lessons learned, and recommended improvements to governance, policy, procedure, and oversight. Mary, when's that coming out?
I believe that they're meeting, they're going to be bringing that out in September. And obviously parents are frustrated because, and also I think it would be fair to Dr. Hill to bring it out as well, because she's operating under this kind of what happened, how were decisions made, what are these supposed improvements that they're going to be bringing in, what are the recommendations, lesson learned. And as you said earlier, parents are saying, what's going on, because Charlotte has this turnover and we really want to support public schools. So that should come out next month.
Before they made this announcement that they plan to release some of the details of what the investigation turned up, we talked about this last week on the roundup, that it might be in the best interest of Dr. Hill to talk about it because she can release whatever she wants to. She's not under any state law personnel records. Is she likely to augment, do you think, anything that comes out of this report?
I think she's probably going to be looking toward the future, toward what her plans are for a CMS, and that I think she'll follow their lead. She doesn't want to get bogged down in this is more information, this is contradictory information. So I think she will mainly be looking. Now, I can't predict what she's going to do, obviously.
So Ashley, this was not a unanimous decision on the part of the school board to release this report. In fact, 6 school board members voted yes. Three members voted. They didn't vote at all. They abstained from the vote. Monty Witherspoon, the chair of the board, Stephanie Sneed sustained, and Lenora Shipp. Why?
Yeah, so Sneed was kind of vague. She basically said, as board chair, she's already spoken a lot about this investigation at a high level, and she felt it was best she maintain neutrality as chair. But Monty Witherspoon was a little bit more specific. He said, while he 100% believes in transparency, he wants to fully understand what is involved in this as far as the vote, as far as what's released. He said, some of the language he said was concerning as far as the motion, I think, that was made. And I think he was just trying to get some clarity on what exactly the board would be releasing. So that was his reasoning for abstaining from the vote. Not sure about Lenora Shipp, but those were the kind of stated reasons given.
Okay. So we'll stay tuned. The month of September is looming large. It's next week, so we'll see when that thing comes out. Former U.S. Border Patrol Commander Gregory Bovino, who supervised Operation Charlotte's Web here last November, was back in town this week. Julian Berger, why?
Yeah, so he was at Manolo's Bakery as well as other places in East Charlotte, South Boulevard, filming a video for Border Hawk, which is a conservative news source that covers immigration, border patrol, all of that.
So one place, as you mentioned, that he visited was Manolo's Bakery. This was a place of refuge, a gathering spot, a kind of hub during Operation Charlotte's Web for people in the Hispanic community. And our reporting at WFAE says that Manolo Bentacor, who is the owner, encountered Bovino in the parking lot of his store. Axios Charlotte says that Bovino arrived unannounced at the bakery on Sunday evening with a videographer for that organization and asked to enter the bakery. And Betancourt refused, telling him he wasn't welcome inside the bakery, on his property, or in Charlotte. Which is the more accurate description of what actually happened?
Yeah, so a little bit of both from what Manolo told me. They were both arriving to the bakery at the same time. And Manolo got out of his car, saw Bovino starting to film with his videographer, and then Manolo started to confront him. They spoke for like 20, 30 minutes. And then towards the end of that 20, 30-minute conversation, Bovino asked if he could go inside, get a pastry. His videographer too asked as well. And Manolo said, no, I'm not letting any of y'all in.
And Manolo described the encounter this way.
At the beginning, I was shaking. I was very scared. He said, oh, you Manolo? He said, yeah, you're the one who shut the business just to protect illegals.
You tried to speak, Julian, with Gregory Bovino this week. Were you able to?
Yeah, so I was speaking with him on X Sunday night after this all happened, trying to figure out what was his reasoning for being there, what was his response.
So he sent you several texts, one of which said that, quote, non-assimilative immigrants are anti-American. What is a non-assimilative immigrant?
Yeah, so he was referring to Manolo. He like in the soundbite mentioned Manolo had said that or Gregory Bovino has said that he Manolo shut the business down to protect illegals. And so Bovino's reasoning is doing things like that is anti-American because you're not assimilating to white American culture that is only protecting legal immigrants or legal citizens.
He also stated in his texts back and forth to you that mass deportations are not being carried out in any form or fashion and called that a government lie. Yet the Trump administration says about 356,000 people have been deported so far this year nationwide, between 5,000 and 6,300 in North Carolina alone. And so far this year, about 1,600 arrests have taken place just in Charlotte. And Mary, there has been, by all reports, an increase in these deportation efforts on the part of the Trump administration. Gregory Bovino was a Trump darling. Why is he refuting the administration's claim?
Well, first of all, he is actually trying to get some sound bites, stay in the headlines. He's no longer the head of U.S. Border Patrol,
Right.
but he has the podcast, I believe. He has opened an exploratory committee to look into running for president in 2028. So a lot of these things he's doing, they're performative. He wants to set himself up as an immigration hawk. But actually, under the new Department of Homeland Security Secretary Mark Wayne Mullen, the immigration surges have happened, though more under the radar. Greg Bovino also is still under investigation for the killings in Minnesota, we have to say. But we've seen them add a lot more agents. They are going after the U.S. folks who are married to U.S. citizens, folks who are in the middle of an asylum claim, and they've gotten a lot more cooperation from local and state law enforcement. So we do see this surge happening, but I do believe, Bovino, you're going to see him doing a lot from now until, and he lives in North Carolina, so we might see a lot more of him than most folks.
So the Trump administration continues to lie about just who they are rounding up. They continue to insist that they're all criminals, the worst of the worst. Julian, you took a deep dive into the backgrounds of those people who have been arrested so far this year in Charlotte. What did you find? Were they hardened criminals?
Yeah, so 2 and 10 had criminal convictions, like they've actually been convicted of a crime. And then 4 and 10 had pending criminal charges, and that could be anything as small as like a traffic ticket to a felony. So the problem with this data is we don't know what criminal charges they have. It could be the range is very big. And then the other 4 and 10 did not have a pending criminal charge or criminal conviction.
In a text he sent you, Bovino said during his trip to Charlotte, he found, quote, massive amounts of illegal aliens walking around in broad daylight with impunity. And earlier this week, we had Maria Hernandez on the program. She's a U.S. citizen. She works at Shake Shack at the airport, a shop steward with Unite Here. That's a hospitality union. And I asked her about Bovino's assertions.
That's not true. Because I've seen it. I've driven down South Boulevard, which is very populated with Latinos. It's almost considered like Little Mexico. And if you go down there, like I was down there last week, it was deserted. My son and me drove down there because we were canvassing, and he even said, "What the hell is going on?" He goes, "Why? There's no traffic." I go, "Yeah, because everybody's scared. Nobody wants to go out."
And in his text to Julian, Bovino said that, quote, anti-Americans like Manolo flourish on the backs of illegal aliens. It is the new Democratic plantation owners, the new slaveholder, the new communist. I'll get a comment from you, Mary, when we come back.
Good morning, and thanks for being with us. You're listening to Charlotte Talks on WFAE. It's the local news roundup. Coming up on Monday, Charlotte Talks, millions of bison once roamed North America, including North Carolina, after near extinction date, and other large animals are making a surprising comeback. We talk with the author of a recent book about why these populations plummeted and how they are returning. That's Monday on 90.7 WFAE.
President Trump enrages ranchers with the new beef import plan. On the next Friday News Roundup, how a move to lower the cost of meat has Americans more frustrated over Trump's economic policies. Plus, nearly half of U.S. states sue to block new mail-in voting rules ahead of the midterms, and the country loses its great unifier, Dolly Parton. All next time on 1A.
And you can tune into 1A coming up this morning at 10 o'clock.
WFAE presents Public Square, a new civic conversation series exploring issues that shape our lives. The series begins October 29th at the Carolina Theater with Freedom and Responsibility, What We Owe Each Other. Former Davidson College President Carol Quillen moderates a conversation with Pope Foundation President John Hood and NYU law professor Melissa Murray about disagreeing without becoming divided. Tickets at foundation.cmlibrary.org.
It's Charlotte Talks and the local news roundup on 90.7 WFAE and WFHE. I'm Mike Collins. We're here with Nick Della Canal, WFAE's host of All Things Considered, and a reporter with us. Julian Berger is also our race and equity reporter at WFAE. He's with us. Ashley Fahey, managing editor of the Charlotte Ledger, and Mary C. Curtis is a columnist for Rollcall.com and host of their Equal Time podcast. So just before the break, Mary, we heard, I read a portion of a text that Gregory Bovino, the former head of the Border Patrol, wrote to our Julian Berger, in which he said, anti-Americans like Manolo Bentancur, who runs Manolo's Bakery, flourish on the backs of illegal aliens. It's the new democratic plantation owners, the new slave owner, the new communist. What's your take on that, Mary?
Well, first of all, I don't think anybody should compare anything to slavery and enslavement and plantation unless they're talking about enslavement of men, women, and children. Also, I think Julian can attest to this. I personally know a lot of immigrants and folks who are U.S. citizens who do carry around their papers, their passports, because they say there is racial profiling, folks who are stopped. And the questions are asked later, and even folks that they won't even ask for their passports and proof of citizenship before they handcuff them or detain them or accuse them of being here as undocumented folks. Also, you know, we have had people come from all over the world for generations, unless you're a Native American, I suppose, and they've always retained so much of their own cultures, and that's a piece of what America is. And other people actually adapt that as well, and it's all becomes America. So we have seen this push, and these folks like J.D. Vance and other folks talking about some Americans being more American than others, depending upon how long you've been here. Let's face it, the color of your skin, the language you speak, the accent you have. And so we've seen that play out. And so you see a lot of that in Bovino's language, and there is an audience for that. And as I say, he's raising his own profile. You'll probably see some of this encounter that he's had in Charlotte recently with Manolo on his websites and in his campaign materials. But on the other hand, as your guest had said, we're seeing the effects, which is folks don't feel safe to go out.
So, Julian, I don't know that this information about what he said in that text to you is widespread information within the Hispanic community in Charlotte, unless they consume our reporting here on WFAE. But has there been any reaction to his comments?
Not to his comments, but to his appearance, to him being in the community. I think the Spanish language media outlet, they covered it pretty heavily this week, and that has led to a fear of what happened last November to happen again, a fear of white nationalists coming to East Charlotte, South Boulevard, and doing things that are racist against immigrants. So there's this kind of overall fear and uncertainty about what's going to happen next, if Bovino is going to keep coming back, and what that will mean for the future.
Julian Berger is our race and equity reporter for WFAE News. Thank you for joining us this morning. I appreciate it. Ashley is with us. Ashley Fahey, with the managing editor of the Charlotte Ledger. We're getting a little closer to the deadline set by NCDOT to decide on whether the Charlotte Area Regional Transportation Planning Organization will reverse their rejection of the proposed I-77 toll lanes. Charlotte has the most votes on that organization, and at this week's City Council meeting, the debate over what to do continues. From what we've heard, has anything really changed? Is opposition lessening, becoming more entrenched, staying about the same?
From where I'm standing, it feels like it's about the same. The opponents are citing all the things that they've been citing now for, feels like almost a year since, the designs kind of came out last fall. They're saying what has changed since we were given this mandate of, oh, you're going to have to pay back $60 million if you don't approve these toll lanes. We don't see a difference. Of course, supporters of the toll lanes have pointed to the $300 million that NCDOT has promised in community benefits and the things that the West Side and other folks have said are lacking. But many of the folks who are against the toll lanes say it's still not going to be enough to make up for the damage and the displacement that's going to occur if these toll lanes happen.
So the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance is a proponent of these lanes, and Robert McCutcheon, who is with the CRBA, emphasized the latest proposal that you just mentioned, from NCDOT to spend $300 million, invest $300 million on the West Side to bring 2 grocery stores to what is now ostensibly a food desert, and to improve connections between the West Side and uptown.
The debate over I-77 South has too often become about winners and losers. But what if Charlotte can do something bigger? What if we can reduce congestion for hundreds of thousands of people and reconnect communities divided for generations?
How does NCDOT's proposal improve connections?
I think that's a matter of opinion more than a fact. But, I think there's just a lot of questions about what is going to be done about I-77. A lot of what I heard from the opponents are people who are not neutral, but maybe aren't just staunchly opposed to anything, is we just need to look into alternatives than toll lanes. And what do those look like? We haven't really seen those come from NCDOT. NCDOT has said certain things would not be feasible, but they haven't really come up with alternatives. And I think that's where a lot of the opponents are saying, and some members of council, frankly, are saying we need to see more research, more third-party investigation into what else can be done. But again, there's a lot of folks who are saying we need this project. It's 77 is a mess, it's dangerous, and we need to figure something out, or we don't want to have to pay back the $60 million.
And there are, of course, opponents to this. Reverend Janet Garner-Mullins urged council members this week not to change their minds.
The question before you is simple. What has changed? The concern raised by residents have not changed, and the burdens that toll roads place on working families has not changed. What appears to have changed is the pressure on local government to revisit decisions that already reached through public engagement and careful deliberation.
That pressure, of course, is the threat that no voting members of CartPo are going to have to repay the $60+ million already spent on the project. Charlotte has more than 40% of the weighted vote on that board in terms of making that decision. I did the math. Does that mean that if this goes through and they follow through on their threat, that Charlotte will owe $24 million?
Well, I think there's been some debate about, what is even the legality of the state kind of imposing this. It's a little hard to say what sort of, latitude the city has to fight it, or CartPo members have to fight this thing that came down in the budget requiring them to pay back the money. But it would be a substantial amount of money for sure. And I think that's something that's being considered in this. But I think we're going to expect a very big turnout at the September 23rd CartPo meeting. Yeah. The opponents are planning to come out in full force, as are the supporters, I'm sure. And it was a very close vote this May when they voted to rescind support for the toll lanes. So be very curious to see how it goes later in September.
So I've asked several city officials on this program over the last several months if this is something that we can afford if this comes to pass, and I really haven't gotten an answer. Is that a figure that would be painful for the city of Charlotte to have to come up with?
I think, it's hard to say. I'm not obviously in their financial office. 24 million is substantial. Where does that come from? What gets impacted by that, right? Like if you have to pay that amount of money or some tens of millions of dollars, that's not insignificant. Could the city carry it? I mean, maybe, probably, but I think something else would have to get impacted. And there's also an optics to this, is this wasting taxpayer dollars? I think there's a lot of political kind of dynamics, so to speak, even if the city could afford it.
Well, Republican voters in South Carolina went back to the polls again. This is the fourth time they've been to the polls so far this summer to vote in the GOP runoff for U.S. Senate to replace the late Lindsey Graham on the ticket. The outcome pretty much mirrored the results of the primary in terms of which candidate won which part of the state. But Senator Darline Graham beat Representative Ralph Norman from Rock Hill 52 to 48%. He took York and Greenville counties and much of the upstate. And Michelle Gelzer is a Fort Mill voter and a Norman supporter.
He has a personal connection with us as voters. He's not just a politician, he's with us. And he understands, he listens to us, and that's what we need. We don't need to send all of our money elsewhere. We need to keep it here.
Unfortunately for Norman, Graham took some of the upstate, the Midlands, and the Low Country in total, and she won. Any surprise, Mary, with the outcome?
Not really, because Donald Trump, the president, went all in for this. He did a rally for her. This was a needed win, I think, for him, because remember, in the South Carolina gubernatorial primary for Republicans, his pick did not win. And he's lost some of the folks he's endorsed around the country have lost. So he felt very close to Lindsey Graham, for one thing. And he was all in on this. His PAC gave money. A lot of other Republican candidates are saying, where is our money? But anyway, that happened. And it was interesting because Darline Graham was very proud that she didn't know a lot of things. So at a debate, she said that national security wasn't her thing. And then she ran on that and basically said, I've been said that I'm not a politician, guilty as charged. And so it's interesting to hear her get up and say, I'm against the DEI, which apparently is folks getting things they don't deserve or don't have the background, has the background to have, when she herself is admitting that she doesn't know a lot of things. But Trump
the
can
big
say,
takeaway from that debate was, and it's the cut that everybody in the country has played over and over and over again, is that she couldn't answer the question about whether or not Taiwan was important to our national security, but she has said that she has been more focused on pocketbook issues. And that statement hit home to Tom Fulkerson, who is also a voter in Fort Mill.
I like her thoughts. I mean, I agree that let's worry about the economy and what's going on here.
So was this election about pocketbook issues? Was it about Graham's name being so well known throughout the state? Or was it about Trump's endorsement?
I think it was about all of those things with a heavy thumb on Trump's endorsement and the fact that South Carolina really is a red state. She's going to be running against another woman. South Carolina will have a female senator, Dr. Annie Andrews, the Democrat, but Republicans have such a lead going into this. Let's say that Darline Graham, as one voter said they talked to, she said, I'm voting for Darline Graham. I feel there's people there who can bring her up to speed, which I thought was kind of interesting for a senator going in there. Ralph Norman was very upset that Trump got into it because he's really been a supporter of Donald Trump's policies. He's incredibly conservative. That's what the upstate voters said. But his sin was that Donald Trump can hold a grudge forever. And Ralph Norman endorsed Nikki Haley in 2024. And you see Trump tweet right away saying that ruined his career. So.
During her victory speech this week, Graham made note of her humble upbringing and doing without a lot of money as she was growing up, which she says is why she understands the struggles faced by South Carolinians.
I'm a hard worker with a servant's heart. I grew up in the back of a bar and liquor store in one room in central South Carolina. My parents worked long, hard hours to make ends meet. We didn't take vacations. If they were sick, they had to get up and go to work because the doors weren't open, we weren't making money. My mother passed away when I was 11 and my father just over a year later.
She also spent her entire career, up to now at least, working in public administration and disability services in the Palmetto State. If she wins this election, will that give her, Mary, do you think, a different point of view than some Republicans or even her late brother Lindsey?
Well, I'm not sure. She told that anecdote about her parents. They didn't have federal health care, a lot of health care, so they had to go to work even when they were sick, and they died young. So it would seem that lesson would be people need better health care, and that is not what she took from that. I think she thanked Lindsey Graham and honored him. She also thanked Donald Trump. So I think we can really see that in the Senate, she will be a reliable vote for anything that Trump puts forth.
So now the race is on toward November, and in her acceptance speech, she took a page from Lindsey's playbook, wasting no time in going after her Democratic opponent, Annie Andrews.
Gun control, government-run health care, abortion until the moment of birth. Bad idea after bad idea. Annie Andrews backs them all.
Fact check, Annie Andrews backs universal background checks and safe storage laws for guns. She also wants to ban weapons of war from civilian streets. She wants to protect and expand Medicaid and Medicare and advocates for a public option to expand affordable coverage for all South Carolinians. She is a pediatrician, by the way. And she wants to restore Roe v. Wade protections, expand maternal health services, and guarantee access to contraception and infertility care. I'm going to talk to her about all of that. She has accepted our invitation to be on this program at a later date. We also reached out to Graham after she won and hope to hear from her soon. And we have also reached out to both North Carolina Senate candidates. Michael Whatley, the Republican, has not gotten back to us. Democrat Roy Cooper is, quote, still deciding. So we will let you know what happens.
The playbook nationally now we see is all Republicans are trying to say Democrats are way far left because they can't talk about the war or prices or gas or health care or Trump becoming the builder in chief with his, ballroom in the Kennedy Center. So they are going to be saying exactly what Darline Graham is saying. It'll be interesting to hear the conversation with Dr. Andrews.
Okay, so there's been a lot of talk recently about teen takeovers. CMPD recommended changing current curfew hours to 9 p.m. for anyone under 18, Nick. There appeared, at least on council, to be some urgency about this earlier this summer, and they were set to discuss it this week. They didn't. Why?
Well, there was a discussion, but they didn't take any action at City Council. And you're right, there has been a lot of urgency around this issue. There's been a lot of concern about these teen takeovers taking place around Charlotte and just becoming combustible and unruly. There have been shootings at some of these, and they get really chaotic. But what the proposal has been from the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department is for there to be a youth curfew for anyone 17 and under, 9 o'clock every night of the week. And there has seemed to be a lot of hesitation and skepticism from council members. You heard that a lot again this week, where the police chief came up and made a presentation and said, this is how we imagine it would work. The police chief, Estella Patterson, really tried to emphasize, we are not trying to criminalize teenagers or youth. That was a big concern. She was saying, we're not trying to criminalize. We just want to have some kind of mechanism so that when we see big groups of kids out and about around the city, we can actually do something. We can tell them, hey, you need to go home, or we can call their parents to have them come pick them up.
This is not a problem that is unique to Charlotte. This is happening in various cities all over the country, and I know that council members have been looking at how other cities have reacted to this and what they've done. There's now talk of instituting a pilot program, and CMPD is expected to return to council next month to talk about how that might work. I have less than 30 seconds. Do we have any information on what they might be planning to do?
Well, I think what I heard was maybe a 6-month pilot program. So this is sort of a way to maybe assuage some of those fears about among council members, just to be like, okay, let's see how this would work, if it actually has any impact on teen takeovers, and then try to decide from there if they want to make it permanent.
When we come back, North Carolina elections changes and a meta settlement that will net some money and benefit parents.
It's 9:40. You're listening to Charlotte Talks on WFAE. Coming up at 10 o'clock, today's news roundup on 1A covers a federal judge lifting the block on President Trump's mail-in voting limits, a historic drought exacerbating the northwestern wildfire season, and reports of White House intervention in a pending DOJ lawsuit against Live Nation. The hour delivers a comprehensive breakdown of the major national developments shaping the country. Tune in.
Your old car may have a few great stories left to tell. The truck that's been parked for years, the motorcycle you never ride, even that old boat or camper can take one last road trip, this time to benefit WFAE. Our vehicle donation partner handles the pickup, paperwork, and sale, making the process easy from start to finish. Your donation supports the journalism you trust and may qualify for a tax deduction. Learn more at WFAE.org/cards.
Listen for WFAE's Bizworthy, a weekly roundup of Charlotte area business news.
Mecklenburg County, while growing, isn't growing as fast as smaller areas, including some of the places that ring Mecklenburg County.
Catch Bizworthy Thursdays at 6:45 and 8:45 on Morning Edition on 90.7 WFAE and WFAE.org. Support for Bizworthy comes from the Law Office of Robertson and Associates.
It's Charlotte Talks on WFAE and WFAE.org. It's the local news roundup. I'm Mike Collins. Nick Della Canal is with us, host of All Things Considered every afternoon on WFAE, and a reporter for us, Mary C. Curtis, columnist for Rollcall.com, host of their Equal Time podcast, and Ashley Fahey, who is the managing editor of the Charlotte Ledger. Governor Josh Stein is urging officials to delay the adoption of new election rules passed by the Republican-controlled State Board of Elections in a party-line vote, which set new conditions on mail-in ballots and which would make it easier to throw out ballots cast by voters who don't bring photo ID to the polls. This was scheduled to come before the State Rules Review Commission yesterday. Mary, what did they decide?
Well, the thing of it is there were written objections, not just from our Democratic Governor, Josh Stein. And so actually the state legislature has to take it up. They probably won't meet until after November, so nothing will happen before the elections. Let's just say, though, what the governor said, that we should make it easier to vote, is probably true. And the fact that there is really no fraud, when folks say, well, we need it for election integrity, but the elections hadn't been questioned before people brought that up because they have been going pretty well. And these rules actually would make it tougher for a lot of folks to have their votes counted, because it used to be the entire commission, Democrats and Republicans, had to agree before someone's excuse for not having voter ID was tossed out and their vote wasn't counted, or a ballot wasn't counted, a mail-in ballot. And a lot of people depend on mail-in ballots. But the new rules would mean it would only be a majority. And since the Republicans have a majority on all the election commissions in all of the 100 counties, it could turn into a partisan decision, or at least the appearance of a partisan decision. And so, we see what is happening and why. There are a lot of objections. We also see, remember, on the federal level, we recently had a Supreme Court case that said that Trump's efforts to get the United States Postal Service involved in whether mail-in ballots would be sent to people if they weren't on a so-called federal database or a list.
So let's talk about that, because that has gone.
tough.
Let's talk about that, because that's gone to the courts now. This is an executive order that Donald Trump issued that said that he wanted to tamp down on mail-in voting, something that he engages in every election. The court stopped that from going forward. The Supreme Court stepped in and said, "Okay, you can go forward on a temporary basis."
Yes.
And then the lower court that stopped it in the first place said that since the Supreme Court has said, "Okay, we're dropping our stop." So.
But the Supreme Court did not rule on the legality of it.
Right, exactly.
It is still, the cases are going through, and we see attorneys general throughout the country are objecting. We see lawsuits, many of them by Mark Elias's law firm and other law firms. I had one of the lawyers on my show, and I just moderated a panel with one of the lawyers. So all of this stuff is caught up. But I think there is a lot of confusion and chaos. And that too is the point, that a lot of people will say, well, should I vote mail-in if my vote isn't going to count? Where do I go? Will there be troops out there? And that's actually the goal of all of this.
Well, there's been no guidance provided to states' attorneys general that run these elections in most states. They don't know what to do, and now they have to do it. They have to provide these citizenship lists, allegedly, to the government before the midterms. The midterms are just weeks away. There's a question about whether or not any of this can really be accomplished, and what that will do to the legality of the elections. And as you mentioned, that puts chaos into the system. And that seems purposeful. And you sound like you're crazy if you say something like that in the United States. But since the House of Representatives impeached Donald Trump in January of 2021 for incitement of insurrection on January 6th, is it beyond the realm of possibility that chaos and turmoil is a tactic he is planning to use to block the results of the midterms should they not favor Republicans?
Well, I think one of the answers to that is to look at all of the safeguards and preparations that states around the country, with both Republicans and Democrats, ahead of the voting apparatus, because it is supposed to be a state function and not a federal function. That would be unconstitutional. And we see folks like former Attorney General Eric Holder and so forth, gaming out scenarios of what will happen if. And you might, as you said, Mike, say at one point, well, isn't that extreme? But would anybody have said that there was going to be an insurrection at the Capitol in order to overturn a fair election? We have seen the extreme happen. So I think I believe that states are cautiously optimistic that with these preparations that elections will go on and they will be legal and people will be able to vote. But at the same time, the president has floated the idea, say, of declaring a national emergency and stopping the voting if he doesn't believe that things are fair. So I just think that voters themselves should check their voting status, figure out where they vote and how they're going to vote, and have a plan.
Attorneys general in, I think, 23 states and the District of Columbia experienced a major victory in a case this week involving Meta. They are the owners and operators of Facebook and Instagram. Meta will have to pay between $16.68 billion and $18 billion, B with a B, to resolve claims that Facebook and Instagram harmed children by designing addictive features and collecting minors' data without consent. That money will now go to 51 states and territories, and at a press conference this week, North Carolina Attorney General Jeff Jackson read from Meta's own damning internal documents.
Our overall company goal is total teen time spent. Instagram is a drug. We're basically pushers.
Governor Josh Stein described Meta's actions this way.
Instagram's internal documents showed that it knew just how harmful its apps were for children. Today's settlement represents a major win for parents. It will help us keep young people safe by requiring Meta to change how its apps operate to reduce teen addiction.
So, Nick, how much is our state going to get from this settlement?
We are slated to receive at least $451 million and up to $646 million. That's over the next 10 years. I think this year we're actually slated to get our first check of $45 million. So that's a pretty big chunk of change. We don't know exactly how the General Assembly is going to spend that money. It's going to be up to them to decide. I think that Attorney General Jeff Jackson said that he was hoping that lawmakers would use it for like after-school programs, summer school programs, crisis helplines for kids, and some health workers for schools. So again, it's up to the lawmakers to decide, but that is no small chunk of change that is headed our way. Yeah.
So Governor Stein says that Meta did not see children as precious beings to be protected. They saw them, quote, as dollar signs to be exploited. And Jackson pointed out that there are three major pieces to this settlement: access, safety, and accountability. The company will also have to make changes to their apps to end the so-called endless scroll.
The endless scroll was a big piece of engineering addiction. As a result, by default, Meta will now have to introduce productive pauses when kids have been scrolling for a while in order to encourage them to stop.
So what other changes has the company agreed to? Do you know?
Yeah, there's a couple. There are things like disabling beauty filters for kids. By default, teens are going to have their likes hidden on Instagram. Also, I think there's a 2-hour time limit for teens that they can only get past with parent permission. And also a block on teens using social media at night between like midnight and 6 a.m. So you can't do all-night doom scrolling anymore.
Jackson has said this settlement comes in lieu of litigation, which would have taken years. And now, he says, parents will have options.
Our message as this rolls out is going to be to kids and parents about the new settings that exist and how they are defaults that are designed to be shifted up and down based on what parents feel is appropriate for their children. This is going to lead to millions of conversations between parents and kids all across the country.
Has there been any reaction from parents? Has there been any reaction from kids who were just up in arms about the possibility of losing TikTok? Now they're being curtailed on Instagram. Mary, has there been any reaction that we know?
Well, I do think that parents felt it was a bit of duplicity because they, the tech company was saying we're safe, and they felt it wasn't. And the kids were more into control because they know a lot more how to manipulate their devices and all of these things. And so now I think parents feel a little more in control. So we'll see what happens. I'm not sure about all these conversations taking place, though.
When's this going to go into effect, Nick?
I don't know that off the top of my head, but what I was going to say is I think it will be interesting since this is going to kind of start the conversation in those households, I think, but kids are very good at getting around certain limits. So and also this is just Facebook and Instagram, so this doesn't apply to other sites. And so I think there was a question about whether like other social media sites might implement similar restrictions, or say, hey, we don't have any restrictions for the kids, come on in.
Well, this is a shot fired over the bow, it seems to me. I mean, if they're going to, I guess to Meta, that fine is a drop in the bucket nonetheless. Yeah. But it's a shot fired over the bow to these other institutions that may want to take a look at what they're doing or not doing to protect kids. Right? Wrong? Maybe?
I think that's a good assessment. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Sales taxes were booming, Ashley, when transit boosters decided that a 1-cent transportation sales tax would generate enough money to pay for our dream projects for transportation. They believed that the tax would bring in, I think, $20 billion over the next 30 years, and they were on track for a while. But now those sales tax collections have fallen off. Why?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of reasons for it, Mike. There's obviously a lot of people have moved here, but we're not seeing the population gains that maybe the region is seeing and other places are seeing. I do think consumer spending has changed a lot. Things have gotten really expensive, and maybe folks are spending more on things that aren't, eligible for this sales tax, boost, like groceries and gas, and therefore aren't buying houses and cars as much. So those are probably some of the reasons, but there's a lot of things there.
I was going to ask you if you thought that the rising cost of everything has caused people to buy less. But if everything's going up in price, even if you're buying something, you're still paying more in sales tax because it costs more. So the balancing act has not been realized.
Well, yeah, it just also depends on what you're spending on. So we know that groceries are exempt, for example, like essential goods are exempt from what's getting allocated as far as the transit and things of that nature. So if you're not spending as much on cars and homes and buying furniture for a new house, there's just less sales tax revenue.
So what does this mean for our transit plans and for the expansion of the blue line and the gold line and things like that, red line?
Yeah, and I think it's a really open-ended question at this point because, sales tax revenue can be so volatile on a year-to-year basis. I mean, we saw in the pandemic, it obviously plummeted. Coming out of the pandemic, it was double-digit percentage growth year after year. Now it's flattening. So in a couple of years, we'll be up again, maybe. It's really hard to predict sales tax revenue, I would say, as an overall thing. But if you're banking on 4% sales tax growth every year and you don't achieve that could result in billions, millions at least less for transit projects and all these things that we have to get built with the plan.
Preferred Parking, which is a Charlotte-based operator of parking lots and garages, suffered a data breach involving customers' credit card information. Ashley, when did this happen?
Yeah, so in statements with other states, Preferred Parking said that the breach happened June 7th and June 8th. About 73,000 people were impacted across its footprint. Majority of those were in North Carolina. Of course, Preferred Parking is based here and operates a lot of parking lots and decks here in Charlotte. So, the company is advising that people check their financial statements for unauthorized charges and has committed to improving its security measures.
And the amusement park operator Six Flags, which just happens to own Carowinds, has announced that they are moving their corporate headquarters back to Arlington, Texas next year. They just moved from Texas to Charlotte 2 years ago. What's up? Why are they doing this?
Well, they say it's to keep all their employees in one place. They've got 5 parks near Arlington. But I will also note the city of Charlotte did not offer them incentives, and I believe the state of Texas might have. So if I had to guess, Mike, that had a factor in it. So that's about 100 positions will be moving from Charlotte to Texas, probably in the next year.
So what, if anything, will this mean for Carowinds, the amusement park itself?
You know, they say they're still committed to investing here. They're still going to be building that crazy log flume ride. But as far as, you know, will we be the test ground for new technologies and things like that? I don't know. Maybe not.
We're going to end today with a remembrance of a woman responsible for another amusement park, Dollywood. America lost a superstar this week, a woman who rose from nothing to become one of the biggest selling artists of all time, all the while stressing her humanity and making friends everywhere.
But they never give me
Dolly Parton died this week, and the outpouring of love has been amazing to watch. Nick, aside from her prolific songwriting and unmatchable career, where else did she leave her mark?
Well, of course, she was a major philanthropist and literary advocate. Her Imagination Library has given millions of free books to kids around the world. In North Carolina, she's given nearly 25 million free books to hundreds of thousands of kids.
She was a big promoter of reading. She started that, as you say, the Imagination Library, a book-giving program that sent free, high-quality books to children. Jessica Strickland is a spokesperson for the state's Smart Start program, and she says Parton pushed families to read together.
Children refer to her as the book lady, right? They see her name, they hear about her books. So I think she understood that a book is more than a book. It can spark imagination, build vocabulary, strengthen family bonds, and just really open that door for children and families.
Dolly Parton left the world at 80, but her music, her legacy, and the gifts she apparently gave to everyone she met will live on. I want to thanks to Nick Della Canal, Julian Berger from WFAE News, Mary C. Curtis from Rollcall.com, and Ashley Fahey from the Charlotte Ledger. We will leave you today with Dolly.
Support for Charlotte Talks comes from Mazda of South Charlotte. Charlotte Talks' executive producer is Gabe Altieri. The senior production assistant is Sarah D'Elia, and producer Chris Jones. Charlotte Talks is made right here in the WFAE studios. We also have production help from Emmy Berger, who has been with us throughout the summer. Thank you so much for joining. It's 10 o'clock. That's going to do it for today's local news roundup on Charlotte Talks. Coming up next is 1A right here on W.